One thing which plagues many dependency injection containers is what they do in regard to circular dependencies. So this is something we're going to take a look at with AutoFac, and we'll begin with a very simple example. So I'm going to make a parent class and a child class, and they're going to refer to one another. So first of all, we're going to refer to each other using properties. So I'll have a parent with property, and I'll have another class called child with property. And then they will refer to one another as soon as I fix the spelling here. Okay, so parent with property will refer to child with property. Let's call it child. It's going to be a getter and a setter here. And yes, I do want to make it public, by the way. And the same will go for the child with property. So here I'll say public parent with property. Let's call it parent, and then getter and setter as before. Okay, so what I want is I want my container, when I create a parent or a child, to correctly configure this entire setup so that it doesn't go off to infinity. It doesn't end up in some sort of an infinite loop, as we have the parent referencing the parent here, which references a new child, which references a new parent. We don't want a Stack Overflow, basically. We just want some sort of reasonable solution generally. So what I'm going to do, just for demonstration purposes, I will also override the toString implementations, and here I'll just return parent for the parent class, and I'll do the same for the child class, so return child here. Okay, so now if you want to configure the container to do all of this, to set this up correctly, let's see how we can do it. So we'll say var b equals new container builder as before, as we've done a million times already, and now we have to register things correctly. So what can we do? Well, one of the things that we can do is we can instance per lifetime scope the objects, because we are not allowed, surprisingly enough, we're not allowed instance per dependency injection. It's simply not possible. So to register the child with the property, or let's start with the parent actually. So I'm going to register the type parent with property. There we go. Okay, so the first thing I have to do is I have to specify some sort of scope. I cannot use the default instance per dependency scope, because if you think about it, instance per dependency means that you inject an object, a brand new object, in fact, whenever it's needed. And in the case of circular dependencies, this can just really explode into a Stack Overflow, in fact, because as you create a child for each parent and a parent for each child, every time it's a brand new object, this will never end. So instead, we need to specify some other lifetime. So for example, we can say instance per lifetime scope. So this will constrain the lifetime of all the objects that we're actually requesting. Okay, so that's one thing. The second thing is properties order-wired. So seeing how we're using properties, we can use this properties order-wired method, and this will automatically set the properties to what they need to be set. Now, if we expand this, you will see that one of the options here is property writing options. And if I expand the set of values here, you will see that one of the options is to allow circular dependencies. And that's exactly what we want. So we want to allow circular dependencies on this component, and we need exactly the same initialization for the child with property. So I'll just copy this over, and I'll put child with property in here, child with property, and then we can actually see if all of this works. So I'll say using var c equals b.build, like so. And then what we do is we say container dot resolve. For example, we can resolve parent with property, like so. And then let me just scroll so that we don't obscure the view. Parent with property, then we can get its child, for example, and then we can maybe output the whole thing. So I'll console write line the entire thing, and we can execute this and see what we get. Okay, so as you can see, everything works. We're getting a child out of the invocation, so this is fine. What this means is that if you do have two components which refer to each other with properties as opposed to with constructors, for example, then everything is okay. Now let's take a look at a more unpleasant example where one of these components uses a constructor. Well, it's actually not unpleasant, it's just constructors become more problematic. So I'll make a new class, we'll call it parent with constructor, like so. And then I will make a public child with property. We need a different child with property though, the one that references this parent with constructor. I'll put a 1 here as well. So we'll make a new class, child with property 1, and this class is going to refer to the parent. So the parent refers to the child here, and I'll make a constructor for it, and in addition I will make some sort of toString for it as well. So let's have a toString, and here we'll return parent with a child with property. So in this case, what we're doing is we're doing constructor injection. We're injecting the child as a constructor parameter, whereas for the child, we're still going to be using the property. So here we'll say parent with constructor 1. Let's call it parent, and let's do a get and a set here. Okay, so apart from this, let's do a toString as well. And here I will return just child, and then we can make a new main method where we try to implement all of this. So this time around, what we're doing is we still have to use instance per lifetime scope, because that is a sensible way to go, and having instance per dependency is not. But apart from that, we can use the constructor injection for the parent, and then we can use the property injection for the child. So let's do that. So var b equals new container builder, like so, and then b.register type, we register parent with constructor 1, and we say instance per lifetime scope. And then, of course, for the child, we register the type. We register the type as child with property 1. So instance per lifetime scope, and in addition, properties auto-wired once again. Properties auto-wired with that argument to allow circular dependencies. So that's that. And now we can, once again, using var c equals b.build, like so, and then we say console.writeLine, and here we can resolve something more complicated, like we'll resolve parent with constructor 1, and then we'll get its child, and we'll get the child's parent. So we'll come back to the parent, but we'll go through all of the relevant references. So if we execute this, well, we have a bit of a problem that the parent is inaccessible due to the protection level. So let me just fix this quickly. So hopefully Rider does it for us, and when I execute this, I do get the parent with a child property. Okay, so far we've looked at parent property dependencies and property constructor dependencies. The last thing that I wanted to mention is constructor, and the short answer is you simply cannot do it. So if you have a parent and a child and they both take reference to each other in the constructor, then AutoFac officially doesn't support this scenario.